Cairo, Seattle.
What fight do you want to see next?
I want to see Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not as interested in that one. What
is your problem?
I'm not sure. I think it's that Eddie Alvarez isn't as impressive as a 155 champion as Dos Anjos was. I was interested in seeing Conor McGregor fight Dos Anjos. I think I'd rather watch Conor fight Jose Aldo.
Really?
Yeah, and then watch Cowboy Cerrone or somebody like that go fight Alvarez, because Cerrone's beat Alvarez before.
Yeah, I'm with you on Alvarez. I don't find him to be electric. He's a grinder. He's a guy that'll get out there and just stick his chin out there and trade punches and just outlast you. I mean, he's skilled. He's obviously a skilled fighter, but I don't look at him as exceptional or one of the elite, one of the greats, even though he's holding a belt. I just want to see Conor grab that title.
You would have that. You would have a guy holding title in 2 weight classes at that point.
And Aldo, as we talked about before, I don't want to see him get another shot because I'm holding a grudge at him for whining.
Because he's whining. It's Fight here. It's our MMA podcast. I'm Danny O'Neill along with Bob Stelton. We got a great episode coming up. Mighty Mouse, Demetrious Johnson, is going to be joining us, a guy who's defended his title 8 straight fights. I went and looked it up. He's held the title since September 22nd, 2012. And maybe the Ultimate Fighter show that it's unveiling tonight, we're recording this on Wednesday, maybe epitomizes one of the challenges the UFC has right now, which is that there's no next big fight. After Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, there's not an automatic... I mean, there's some interesting bouts. You got Overeem fighting Miocic.
Yeah, there's a ton of interesting bouts, but the problem is your biggest stars. I mean, McGregor just fought.
Mm-hmm.
Ronda Rousey is out. We don't know when she's coming back, and John Jones is out.
Correct.
And GSP's sort of on the fringe. I mean, the biggest names, the guys that are the fighters that are the biggest draws, those 3 outside of McGregor, they're not fighting right now. They're not fighting. So, yeah, there's some, for guys like you and me and people listening to this podcast, there's some great fights. But if you're talking about marquee events that are going to bring in the casual fan the way McGregor and Rousey and Jones to a little lesser extent do, it's not there right now.
And they've created an entire reality show to find the next opponent for Demetrious Johnson because he's cleaned out his entire division.
He literally has. I mean, there really isn't a fight to make at his weight where you go, well, let's see him against this guy. Let's see him against Ian McCall. Let's see him against John Dodson. Let's see him against Cejudo. Name a guy. He's beaten everybody. There isn't anybody who's compelling. The only compelling matchup for him, truly, is to move into a different weight division, which he's done before. That's the last time he lost.
Which was
to Dominic Cruz in 2011. It's been almost exactly 5 years.
He had a draw with McCall.
Yeah,
and then
after that.
And then he fought McCall again and beat him.
Yeah.
And then he's been on a roll since then.
Yeah, and McCall has not. So, I mean, it's
Uncle Creepy.
Uncle Creepy, one of the greatest nicknames ever.
I don't know if it's one of the greatest, man. It
fits his look.
It sets the tone for what is. It's a very disconcerting appearance he has.
Yeah. But this is what they've been reduced to. So I'm sort of torn on this whole new Ultimate Fighter. I love the show. I look forward to it every year. I love that they've kind of gone out of their subtly eliminated the moron, the house moron, right?
They did used to cast him.
The Junie Browning.
Junie Browning was one.
Every year they had just the house dope. Let's get him drunk and stir things up and be the jackass that everybody loves to hate. It got tired, and they've kind of done away with that. But they've been reduced to finding champions from local promotions around the country.
No, Bob. They're global champions.
Yeah, calling them world champions. So this guy is a champion of promotion in, I don't know, Connecticut.
No, he's the champion of the promotion in Klamath Falls, Montevilla Avenue. He's the toughest guy on that block. He's a global champion.
And I look at it and go, this is what his dominance has done to the division. Is we are now forced to kind of go gimmick. I'm sorry to say it, but it's kind of a gimmick. Let's give a young unknown a shot at the champ. You're going to earn a shot at the champ. It's Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed. You're getting a shot at the champ. Nobody knows who the hell you are. You're a champ in your block or whatever, and you're going to get a shot at the champ. And ultimately, when that fight happens, how many people outside of, again, the hardcores are going to be truly interested and intrigued by Demetrious Johnson versus Joe Schmagegi?
See, I think the actual opposite. I think that the general public is going to be more intrigued with watching Johnson fight whoever wins this show because they will become invested.
But they have to be watching the show.
Yeah, the show is an entire vehicle to build up an opponent. But I think if you were looking for a more competitive fight, I think the end result of this is going to be a less competitive fight than you went and had him fight John Dotson again or had him fight someone that he's already beaten. And because you've already seen it, that's not going to have the traction with a casual fan. I think this entire thing is an attempt to, and I'll give Dana White credit on this because Dana has promoted the heck out of Mighty Mouse. And anybody who has not wanted or complained about flyweights and all of those things, Dana's told him to go watch a different promotion because he loves what Mighty Mouse does. He loves how he fights. This is an attempt to get him a little bit of traction and to make him a headline fight because I don't know if he fought a guy that he's already beat, if that would sell any tickets.
I don't know what. Again, you're right. I understand their rationale for doing it. They're like, hey, we got to do. Who do we put him in there with? Who are people going to get excited about unless he moves up a weight, which I don't think he's really in favor of unless he gets a big fat payday. He did it once. He did it, and it didn't go well. And, in fact, he told me, I've asked him, who hit the hardest? Were you ever really rocked? Because he's been knocked down, but there were those flash knockdowns. He jumped right back up. He's never looked hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Wobbly legs, looking like he's a little foggy. Never have I seen him like that. He said, you know what? The most pain I felt in the cage, the most, impact a shot had on me was against Dominic Cruz. He's just a much bigger guy as much as we look at Dominic and say, man, he's a small guy. Demetrious is a tiny guy, man. He's fighting at 125 pounds. So I just don't know how advantageous outside of his bank book moving up in weight is other than, all right, listen, man, you got to give people a reason to watch you. You've cleaned out your division. Now you're going to fight, Joe Champion from wherever in Schenectady, and you assume you're going to beat him. Then what? He's probably going to have to move up.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if Neck Tattoo gets to Dominic Cruz first. Have you seen Neck Tattoo?
Yeah. Cody Garbrandt?
Yeah.
Cody No Love?
Yeah, Cody No Love.
Yeah.
That is a fearsome-looking neck tattoo.
He's got a lot of ink going on.
If you found out Neck Tattoo was after you, would you be worried?
I'd be a little...
I would think that guy has no regard for anything.
I'd be a little good just based on his ink.
Just look at it as look. What it looks... It's not a normal neck tattoo. I mean, Felix has got a couple now. But those are...
It's a Birdman tattoo.
Yeah. It's a sleeve on his neck.
Yeah. Looks like he's got a turtleneck on 24/7.
The only thing more intimidating I've ever seen is Nate Robinson's, where he's got an 8-ball over his Adam's apple. Like an 8-ball filled in over his Adam's apple. I'm like, good God, that had to hurt.
Yeah, that's a commitment I can't relate to.
No. Yeah. Cody No Love, you got a full neck tattoo after you. Although
he's a good fighter. He's undefeated. He's still young in his career. He's undefeated. I don't know if he's quite...
You don't think he's ready for Dominic?
I don't know. I could see Dominic just sort of picking him apart. Not hurting him and knocking him out, but just completely outpointing him. Going Floyd Mayweather. Hit and run, hit and run, hit and run.
That's kind of what I see, too. And here's Dominic Cruz being the bantamweight Michael Bisping. Not going to knock anybody out. He's not really going to hit for much power, but he's gonna outpoint the hell out of you.
Yeah, he'll just out-hustle you. He just moves. He's just he's in constant motion, right? And I give him credit. I mean, it's been effective. He wins. I mean, his biggest problem has been staying healthy. Guy can't stay healthy. His only loss has come to Uriah Faber back in WEC. He got choked out there, but he hasn't lost since.
Would you call him a professional decision maker?
Yeah.
That's what I think his status is. No one makes decisions quite like Dominic Cruz. You mentioned GSP. There's increasing rumbles. He said he's now in the testing protocol.
Right.
That he is unless you're Brock Lesnar, he gets a little card that allows him to skip this part of it.
That worked out well.
Yeah, that wasn't so great. 4 months of testing before you can fight, and he said that he wants to fight Woodley when he comes back. Should he get a shot at the champ after the way he walked away?
Absolutely. John Jones should get a shot. Until you're beaten, until it's not like a guy saying, you know what, it's not Jose Aldo. Yeah, I got cleaned out in 13 seconds, but damn it, I was a good champ, so I need to get back in front of everybody else. No, you earn your way back if you were beaten, but these guys weren't beaten. Nobody's beaten John Jones. Nobody took GSP's belt.
Hendricks might have, though. I thought Hendricks won that fight.
That's another one I went back and watched with the sound off. And
you said this before, so you watch a fight with the sound off?
I do. Yeah, if it's a big, not every single fight, but if it's a big fight, especially if it's closely contested. I did it with John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. That one I watched about 5 times. Because I think you get so sucked into it. And listen, I make clear I have my favorite fighters. There are guys that I love and I pull for. So I'm as prone as anybody to sit there and listen to the crowd, watch him throw a punch and go, oh, he got him. And then you go back and watch it with the sound off, you realize, no, he didn't barely clipped him, or he didn't hit him at all. It was a guy moving away at the same time. So to me, it's just a really accurate way to see damage, to see what is truly being landed, where you're not being influenced by Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg and the crowd there.
Do you lose some of it because you don't hear the impact of the kick or the punch?
Nah, you probably do a little bit, but I'm watching. You watch the facial expressions, you watch the body language, you watch how they respond to it. You watch if somebody throws a leg kick, how does the guy respond? And if he's, because I think when you have that noise, when you've got that stimulation, if you will, going on, you lose some of those subtleties too. You don't really see the facial response to some of the blows. You don't really see how they respond after they're hit, and you pick up on different things. Just for me, it's just been a really. I feel like I get a much more accurate view of what went down.
So what did you see in the Hendricks GSP fight? GSP is probably my favorite fighter. He's the guy, and toward the end, not as much. And he became a more effective fighter, but after the loss to Matt Serra, you saw him become a more boring fighter. He didn't take as many chances. And look, I think some of that is because of what happened against Serra, but I love GSP. I thought he lost that fight.
Yeah, I just thought he landed more shots that had impact. I mean, he's not as big a puncher as Hendricks by any stretch. And the problem is, I think people score the look of a fight. If a guy's bleeding a lot, if he gets cut and there's blood all over his face, oh, he's losing. He's getting his butt kicked. GSP bruises like I do.
Yeah.
If you touch him, it's going to show. And he's said this a million times. He's like a piece of really ripe fruit, right? He bruises.
You got to say it GSP style though. a piece of really ripe fruit.
Ripe fruit. He
They
bruises.
cannot handle my rhythm.
He marks really easy. Even if he's not hit cleanly, it's going to leave a mark. So after these fights, he looks like, oh man, that guy got hit by a truck. He must have just taken an ass kicking. No, it's not true. You go back and watch the fight. Yeah, he's marked up. But he was never hurt. He was never rocked. He took a shot here or there. He started swelling. But ultimately, he out-hustled him. He did more in that fight, in my estimation. It was close. I'm not saying it was a landslide by any stretch, but I had no issues with the decision at all.
Because he had talked, even going into that fight, I think everybody knew that GSP was thinking about retiring and considering the potential end to it. But my perspective on that fight was that things had gotten closer for him in the division, and that he was getting out before he got. That he got because after watching that fight, I was like, you know what? A decision that close, even if he feels he won, even if GSP feels he won, as the long-term champion, you almost owe it to the guy that almost beat you to give him another shot at it because it was so close and so many people felt that Hendricks won. And the fact that he retired and kind of couldn't be talked out of it because Dana clearly wanted him to fight again.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder about, should he just hop back to the front of the line now, because it's been, 2 years, 3 years?
It's been a while, but he's a massive name. He's a massive draw. He was not beaten for the title. He didn't leave in disgrace. He wasn't, on suspension. He was, so it's just, I think there's a lot of intrigue. I think, now, if I'm advising him, I'm telling him to take a tune-up fight because of how long he's been. I know he's GSP and he's been training, and he's an impeccable athlete. He's one of the great athletes in the sport. Having said that, I buy into cage rust. I buy into ring rust. And to throw him in there against Woodley or whomever he's going to step in there against at a high level, I don't know that that's the best idea right out of the gate when he's been out as long as he has.
We certainly saw that with John Jones and St. Preux.
Yeah, you saw a little bit of it there, but St. Preux is such an awkward guy. So I understood Jones's apprehension. I was wondering in watching that, how differently would he have fought him if that was in he hadn't been out? If that was just his next fight and he'd been on his regular rhythm, would it have been that much different? Because it was a shutout. I mean, it wasn't a close fight.
That's true.
There was no real drama to anything. You knew who won. It just wasn't that compelling, and I think it was just a safety first. This guy's throwing shots from weird angles. He's a big, powerful guy. I'm not going to stand in here and get clipped by one of those crazy shots.
All right. Well, we got Mighty Mouse coming up, and that's going to be brought to you by Emerald Queen Casino. It's the
good people out there, Danny.
Funnest place in the Northwest, I'll tell you that.
It's really the center of the known universe.
When is the next time you're going to be going down there? You got fights?
I think I'm going to call a fight in October, I believe.
So is that where you first called fights, was Emerald Queen?
The very first one I ever did was at the Kent Showwear Center in the world's longest card, where Jens Pulver was my color analyst. And the card, it was the most unorganized thing I've ever been attached to, and I think the entire night from beginning to end was 7 hours.
Oh, my God. 7 hours of calling.
We got up and put headphones down and walked to the bathroom at one point because there was nobody. We were left to our own devices. There was easily a half hour between fights, and we're sitting here going, I don't have any more words. I don't know what else there is to say. So I have to go to the bathroom.
Actually, it's probably good being with Jens.
I followed him. He goes, I don't care, man. I got to go. He put the headphones down, walked off. I said, all right, well, I'm going with you because I'm not talking to myself.
Bob says, if little evil's going, big evil's going to follow him.
Absolutely right. I felt very safe in that.
From there, you graduated to the more professionally run cards at Emerald Queen.
Absolutely right. Yeah. So I've been doing them there for a little while now, and I think the next one will be in October. It's good stuff out there.
Well, I'm going to come down with you next time because I can't miss that as long as I'm not out of town for Seahawks coverage.
Okay.
All right. We got Mighty Mouse. He's coming up next. We're joined now by Demetrious Johnson. He is your UFC champ. I looked it up. He's been that way since September 22nd, 2012. 8 straight defenses of his title. DJ, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, apparently, they have to create an entire TV show to find your next opponent. We're talking to you on Wednesday. The Ultimate Fighter unveils tonight. What did you think when you heard this proposal that they were going to go find champions from a number of different promotions to try to find the next guy that is capable of competing with you?
I thought it was awesome. It's almost like tournament of champions. You got guys from Shuto Brazil, Shuto Japan, Legacy, Titan, RFA, all these great organizations outside of the UFC, and they went around and grabbed the best flyweight champions around the world to throw them in house and compete for a chance to fight me.
DJ, how do you get motivated to fight a guy that you probably never heard of, that you're going to watch a little bit on this show, I would assume? I mean, people are on their toes when they know they've got imminent danger in front of them, somebody's familiar danger. And this is going to be a guy that you've never seen, you've never heard of, who now has a crack at you, and you're supposed to look at him the same way you did Ian McCall or John Dodson or Henry Cejudo or anybody else. How tough is it going to be?
It's not tough at all, man. I'm a self-motivated person. I always like to go out there and compete and train my butt off and put on great performances, and, I never get miscomplacent. I know anybody can lose on any given day. So for me, I'm always motivated to go in the gym and give it my all. And when it comes time for me to fight an octagon, I go out there and take it to them.
One of the biggest changes we've probably seen in the UFC over the past 4 years has been their willingness to promote lighter weight classifications, including creating bantamweight and flyweight champions. How has that impacted your career, Demetrious?
Oh, it's impacted it greatly. I mean, when I first started doing mixed martial arts, there was no 125 or 135-pound weight class. So that I believe that's why I had a long amateur career. There was no point in going to, Japan and these other organizations because the money just wasn't as good. Now that the UFC has implemented those weight classes, not for just the man, but for the women as well. I mean, now the UFC has women weight classes. So for me, to be able to have a lifestyle, be a full-time professional athlete, and have a great career and open up doors for me in different avenues to be able to make money in different ways.
How do you feel fans have embraced it?
I think they embraced it very well. I mean, everybody has their cup of tea. I'm not a fan of coffee, but there's thousands of people around the world that love Starbucks. So does that mean that I don't respect Starbucks? No, I respect Starbucks for what they do because they provide delicious liquidness to my wife and my family. So I think with the UFC, there's a lot of people who don't like the lower weight classes, which is totally fine. But there is a digraphic that people out there who like this weight class.
It's delicious liquidness.
Yeah,
I like it.
I think it's fantastic. No, it's really well said to that point because I feel that the appreciation for lighter weight fighters is growing and understanding the difference that it's not all about one punch power, that there's a beauty and a precision in what you do, Demetrious. And I think fans are beginning to understand it, and maybe that's the next step of growth in the maturation of fan perspectives on the sport.
I believe so, and I think with the Ultimate Fighter being based around the flyweight division, I mean, it's not the first time they did, lower weight classes. They did it for 135 pound, and John Dodson ended up winning that season. So with that being said, I think it's another way to display it, especially on Fox Sports 1 for 12 weeks. I think that's going to help people get a view of, hey, these guys, God made them a little bit smaller. That's it, and We still have the same power, have the same skill set as, the heavyweight guys, but a little bit more of it.
There's so many people out there, Demetrious, that are calling for you to move up in weight. And you've done that before. You fought Dominic Cruz before. And I feel like you're kind of in a position of your own doing. You've been so dominant. You've cleaned out your division. If you beat whoever wins this show, you kind of look at it and go, all right, well, what's left for this guy? It almost feels like you've got no choice but to move up a weight division unless somehow – there's a new hot name at 125 that everybody gets excited about. But do you kind of look at it and say, all right, this is something I'm probably going to have to address after this fight?
No, I'm not going to have to address after this fight. I'm more focused on building my wealth and building my paper up, man. That's what I'm focused on. I think I can do that at the 125-pound weight class. It's just like a football player. Once they win the Super Bowl ring, what is there left to do in football? You basically reach the pinnacle of NFL and you capture the championship. You can retire and not take any more damage and any more concussions. But no, they're like, I love this game. I'm gonna keep on playing that way. If I put 3 more, 4 more years in, I'll be able to collect the pension. I'll have lots of money to sit on. Then I can go out and do other things. So I feel for me, I'm focused on. I've already beat. Let's be honest. Let's just be straightforward. I've already beat 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2 multiple times. Number 2's up at bantamweight now. So for me, it's just fighting and making that money and stacking my paper up. That way, when I'm done fighting, I can do whatever the hell I want. So, if they offer me, hey, you go up to 135 and you can make $1 million, you make $1 million payday, absolutely, I'll do that. But if I'm going to make more money fighting at flyweight, then there's no point going to bantamweight.
What do you think you would be doing now if fighting wasn't your career?
Man, it's kind of hard to say. I think I would probably be in a warehouse somewhere working 9 to 5. I don't know. Like I said, being a professional athlete has opened so many more doors for me, with streaming on Twitch, for going around doing paid appearances. So, so I'm making money from different avenues to just fighting right now.
You train out there in Kirkland at AMC with Matt Hume, who's been a long-established trainer here. I don't know how many people know how world-renowned he is for the work he's done with Japanese fighters. What difference has he made in your career?
Huge difference. At the very beginning of my career, I wasn't with Matt Hume. I was at one of his satellite gyms fighting on his amateur cards. And then now I'm with him full-time and just leaps and bounds. If you guys go back and look at my first Ian McCall fight to the second one, that's the difference when I was doing my own thing. If Ian McCall had my own diet, didn't know what I was really doing. Then the second time I fought Ian McCall, he took over and a huge transition. I ended up winning the belt, beating Joseph Benavidez. And then from there on, you guys just saw me skyrocket with my skill set. And that just shows credit to when, you train and you live in the same town as one of the world's greatest trainers in the world. Good things happen to you.
Hey, Demetrious, I want to bring you back to a different weight division for a moment because you often hear people that don't follow the sport closely say, well, why doesn't this guy fight? It's only 10 pounds. What's the difference? 125 to 135. They don't understand how big of a difference. And, again, you've done it. And, in fact, you and I talked at one point about your fight with Dominic Cruz and how much different that felt in terms of his power or the blows versus the other guys you fought. But for people out there that think, it's 10 pounds, it's not that big a deal, what do you say to that?
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I'm 5'3". Dominic Cruz is like 5'9", maybe 5'10" on a good day. I wake up weighing 100. I woke up this morning weighing 141.4 pounds. I'm not dieting right now. I'm eating whatever I want. I'm having beer, enjoying my life. If I was to go on a limb, I'd probably say Dominic Cruz probably weighs 165 pounds. That's just me shooting high, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been over 145 pounds, like waking up weighing 145. So I'm typically a small guy. When I was going to fight Dominic Cruz the first time, I was coming home from training camp at night weighing 138. So that just shows, for me to cut to 135, that's nothing, And when I'm fighting guys at 125, they're more my natural weight. They're 5'3", they're 5'4". Every once in a blue moon, you walk past a guy who's like 5'7", 5'8", but they're pretty much skinny. Other than that, it's a huge difference. There's range, there's footwork. It's not necessarily the power that Dom presented to me. It was more of how long he was. He was holding me down and he was standing on his feet, and I'm like, good for you, Dom.
Demetrious, we're talking about this, about what fights we were looking forward to next after the Nate Diaz Conor McGregor fight, which everybody had been anticipating. There's a lot of good fights coming up, but not that natural sort of rivalry or build-up that we have from a fighter's perspective around the UFC and even elsewhere. What fights are you looking forward to watching coming up?
Man, it's hard to say. I think that Conor and Nate Diaz was the big shebang for this year. I'm looking forward for Alistair Overeem taking on Stipe Miocic. I'm a huge fan of both those guys. I'm curious to see who Eddie Alvarez is going to fight. And now you're starting to see a lot of guys, not accepting fights. The rumor around the world is that, Eddie Alvarez turned down to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov 2 times because he wants the big money fight, and I don't blame him. But I believe as a champion, you fight whoever the UFC says. If it is a gamble. He could say, I'm a champion, I'll fight whoever they want me to, and he won't get paid as much if he was to wait to fight Conor McGregor. But then again, if he goes out there and beats and believes he still that he beats Khabib Nurmagomedov, then he will finally get to that big payday fight. I'm also looking forward to Stephen Thompson versus Tyron Woodley. That's going to be a great fight too. But other than that, man, I think that Conor and Nate took the stakes out of my excitement for this year.
That was a pretty incredible fight. I'm looking forward to seeing Wonderboy fight too. You mentioned guys and how champions are approaching fights. We saw the purse size for Diaz and McGregor, which is a great sign for fighters about the amount of money that's out there. Part of me also wonders, is that going to lead to guys being more choosy, especially when they get to the top, about risking themselves without getting that huge payoff, that they're going to wait for the bigger payoff?
Yeah, it's already happened. I mean, Tyron Woodley, my boy, love him to death. I mean, he was doing it. He wanted to fight GSP or Nick Diaz. And Nick Diaz hasn't won since 2012 or 11. And then GSP hasn't fought in 3 years. So, but he knows those guys have big names. Not everybody knows who Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is. But, and Wonderboy realized that too. And he goes, you know what? Yeah, I might not bring you that big ass check, but I'll put this foot upside your head. So, and that's what the sport is coming to, because we want to make sure we maximize on the potential growth of our earnings. And, when we're done fighting, there is no retirement. There is no pension. There is nothing. You're done. When you're done, you are done. So you're starting to see a lot of champions look at that way. But you still have a couple of guys who are like, I'm going to I'll fight whoever. If I deserve that big money, I should work my way to it like I have been doing. I'm on my 8th title defense. And, I'm still searching for that big 7-figure payday.
Hey, Danny and I were talking about this earlier, Demetrious, about the reemergence potentially of GSP coming back whenever John Jones comes back. Should these guys be allowed to jump right into a title fight upon their return? Because I'm guessing you and I may have a different opinion on this. I'm of the belief, Demetrious, that they weren't beaten. Nobody beat GSP. Nobody's beaten John Jones. It's a natural. They're huge names on top of it, so it's going to be a big payday for whoever the guy with the belt is. And at the same time, these are guys that weren't knocked out like Aldo and say, well, I should get right back in there. I don't buy that. But these two weren't beaten. I think they should be able to jump right back in. But what do you think?
I think for John Jones, I think he can jump right back in there because he's been active. He just fought, OSP beat him. And then now he is, waiting through some USADA issues. And then, I think he should get right back in the title shot. I would like to see Anthony Johnson get his shot at Daniel Cormier. I mean, Anthony Johnson's been on a tear. He's been doing everything by the book, hasn't been cheating or anything like that. So I think it's right that he gets the title shot next. And after that, John Jones can fight the winner of DC and Anthony Johnson. That was GSP. GSP's never been beat, but he's been gone for the sport for 3 years. 3 years, that's a long time. A lot of stuff has happened in 3 years since GSP's been gone. So I like to see GSP come back and get one fight underneath his belt, just to let people know that he's back, he's serious, he's not come back just to get the belt and retire again. So I like to see him fight one time, throw him against Damian Maia. Throw him against Damian Maia. I mean, Damian Maia's on a big streak. And let's see if he wants to be back for real, or if he just come back for a paycheck. And I have nothing but respect for GSP. I just have to keep it real.
Well, and I agree with you on that part of it. If I were his advisor, I would be saying, listen, we can't just throw you in with the elite fighter in that division. Let's get you a tune-up fight. Let's get you, just get your feet back in there. From a fan perspective or UFC's perspective, I get the idea of, hey, he was the champ. He was not beaten. Let's put him back in there. It sounds like you also believe in cage rust. There are some fighters that say, that's nonsense, that doesn't exist. Others say, I absolutely believe in it. Where do you fall on that?
I mean, it goes back for it all depends on the person. I feel in like GSP's aspect of it. I just, if the person is there to stay for a couple of years, why not? Like, what is it going to hurt for you to get one extra fight underneath your belt before you fight for the title? Because the champion right now is not somebody who is, on your radar in that time. I don't think the, Strikeforce was even. I mean, Tyron Woodley was in the UFC when GSP was champion. I mean, that shows you how long ago it was, 3 years ago. I mean, he probably was, but I can't remember. But I mean, said, Demtrious, he came off 3 years. He came back and put on great performances. He had no cage rest. I mean, he prepared himself very well inside his gym. There's a couple people, John Jones, he's like, I have to get the feel of it. It's all about the mental capacity of the athlete.
Demetrious, I'm going to break one of the fundamental rules of interviewing, which is I'm going to ask you a question I'm not at all sure the answer to, because I think I remember somebody telling me that you have sang gospel in the past. Am I completely out of my head, or is that true?
You're out of your head. I've never sang gospel my whole entire life. Absolutely not.
Somebody sold me a hook, line, and sinker then, and I bought it.
Lord.
His next question was going to be, could you sing something for us?
I was going to try to put you on the spot with that.
Not happening.
Hey, one other thing I wanted to hit with you in the latest move we saw was Rory McDonald going to Bellator. Now we've seen Matt Mitrione do it. We've seen Rampage Jackson do it and Benson Henderson do it. And there's a lot of debate as to whether this is a good or a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it creates competition. It gives you guys, the fighters, other opportunities, other avenues to take. Is it damaging to the sport, do you think? Is it damaging to the UFC, or do you think this is a good, healthy thing?
I think it's a good, healthy thing. It's showing that fighters are starting to fight out their contract and test the market and get what they feel that they're worth. A good example is that Rory McDonald's probably one of the best examples. You look at Rory McDonald, and he is, whether you want to believe it or not, or respect it or not, he is one of the greatest welterweights of all time. In UFC history, he hasn't won over the current champion in the UFC, Tyron Woodley. He's done great performances with Robbie Lawler, and he had a great fight with Stephen One More Thompson, but I think he was a little out of it. He's had little issues with his broken nose, but just to show you that Bellator is offering big money for fighters, and that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. You look at Ben Henderson. I mean, he has a win over Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz just made $2 million. And Rory McDonald has a win over Nate Diaz. He ragdolled Nate Diaz. I don't know if you guys remember that fight, but I do. I mean, he's throwing Nate Diaz around like ragdoll.
Yep.
So he is one of the best welterweights of all time. And he went to Bellator, and I'm happy for him. If the Bellator's going to see him more, there you go. I told somebody the other day, I was like, dude, if you worked at McDonald's and Burger King was going to offer you way more money in a pay raise and shoot, who knows, a promotion, I would slap the hell out of you if you didn't go to, the other organization. So I'm happy for him, man. He's got a family now. Fighting isn't the same like it used to be. When you're single and you don't have any kids, you can stay at the UFC and do whatever you want. But when you have kids and you've been through those wars and you look at your paycheck and you're like, that's it. I broke my nose, blood everywhere, and I lost a couple of years off my life, and this is what I got. Fuck this. I want to get paid now. So who's going to pay me for my blood, sweat, and tears? Because essentially I never forget. The Bennett brothers, they said in the NFL, NFL things were N-word for at least. And at one point I was like, I don't understand it. But I met a guy the other day who just retired. He retired in 2012. And he just had ACL and LCL and meniscus surgery. And he was like, yeah, dude, my body's falling apart on me. And I'm like, but you haven't played football in 3 years. He goes, I know. That's the scary part, right?
Totally true. It's the ability to maximize what you have now. Demetrious, we really love talking to you. We're looking forward to watching the Ultimate Fighter, to see them try and find your next opponent. And really, it's just been so cool to watch your reign here as the flyweight champion.
Hey, by the way, before we let you go, are you making an appearance on the show? Are you going to be part of the show, or are they just going to be talking about you throughout the show?
I made 2 appearances on the show. Other than that is about it. I'm the type of guy where, the show, yes, it's on me to find the next opponent, but, my time is very valuable to myself, and I like to keep it to myself and train and let my body get healthy and continue on becoming a better mixed martial artist.
Well, we're going to see your sizable shadow cast all over this season as they find the next guy for you. Demetrious, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
You look at John Dodson. I mean, Dodson's quick, and Mighty Mouse it was another level of quickness that he had.
Second fight, I mean, he absolutely just painted him. he had nothing for him.
And then you see Dodson comes out and wins his most recent fight.
Yeah.
And basically
he's moved up now. He's moved up in weight.
Well, and he said afterward that he would go back down to fight Mighty Mouse a third time, but does anybody want to see that?
No, he's 0 for 2. And the second one was not close. First one, remember, he clipped Mighty Mouse, knocked him down, but he didn't look hurt. He got right back up. He's a powerful dude for that size, Dodson, but he couldn't hurt him. Knocked him down that one time, and that was it.
I think one of my favorite things about the UFC is how Dana White has been insistent about Demetrious Johnson's greatness, and that Joe Rogan, it's unlike boxing where they'll say that about everybody. They really go out of their way to point out just how great a fighter they think Demetrious Johnson is.
They are his two biggest cheerleaders, without question. I mean, and Joe Rogan says it over and over and over that he is by far the best fighter in the sport, pound for pound. You know, the mythical pound for pound list. You can't disagree with that. If you're somebody that knows the sport at all, watches the sport at all, and you're just talking about skill, ability, there are no holes in his game. Everything he does is top-notch, top shelf, whether it's his ground game, whether it's his boxing, his defense. He rarely gets hit clean. He rarely gets hit more than once with the same punch. He's very seldom. When have you ever seen him look like he was in trouble of being or in danger of being submitted? I mean, he's just a guy that just has a incredibly well-rounded game, and he is so efficient. And anytime they prop somebody up as, oh, here's the guy. This is the guy to really challenge him. It's Henry Cejudo, an Olympic medalist. This is an Olympic caliber wrestler. Now what's he going to do? He abused him. He took him out with a body shot, with a knee. I mean, he's just a guy that's got so many weapons, and they're all good, right? There are guys that have really good stand-up, and their ground game's okay, or they've got fantastic ground game, and their stand-up's pretty decent. He's really exceptional at everything he does.
When you mentioned Cejudo, because basically they waited for Cejudo to get enough fights under his belt and develop to believe that he was going to be the guy that could be a rival for him, and Mighty Mouse just destroyed him.
It wasn't close. It wasn't competitive. And Cejudo, to his credit, and we'll go back to our conversation last week, after the fight, couldn't have been more humble and gracious. There were no excuses, no, I had an injury, I didn't train the way I should have because of this injury. No, he's like, wow, he was the better man. He caught me. That was a good shot, and I'm just going to have to work my way back.
Now, the one thing, we've talked about this before, the build-up to fights. There is, I don't want to make the comparison to pro wrestling, but I guess I am, because there's a pageantry to MMA about how a guy promotes himself. Conor McGregor's the best example, but the Diaz brothers have their own style. There are personas within the sport that lead us to them to become draws.
Right.
And lead them to become the fighters that people want to watch. I think the UFC has done a really good job of being able to recognize that and take advantage of that without making their promotion beholden to it. And I guess what I mean by that is that they are still going to promote the hell out of Demetrious Johnson, even if he doesn't have the persona or the sort of the public traction that a guy like Nate Diaz does.
Yeah, because I think it comes down to the respect for his ability in the sport, the true respect for the art of mixed martial arts, as opposed to what a great personality. They want to capitalize on somebody who's popular or hated and loved like Conor. They're not stupid. They're business people. But they also, I think Dana and Joe Rogan and people like that look at somebody like Demetrious and go, we've got something special here. We've got to keep pushing this. We've got to keep pushing this thing, kicking this can down the street, if you will, until people start to take notice and understand you've got an exceptional fighter here that you may not see again, the caliber of which you may not see again. And he's incredibly unique. And because of his size, I think people are slow to come to that. And I think that's why they feel compelled to say, listen, it's not even about, hey, we can make money off this guy. It's about we owe it to the sport to promote this guy because of what he represents and how he represents the sport.
Yeah, what you just said is much better sort of description of that they feel an obligation to promote the best in the sport, to not promote the best fight, the biggest fights. They feel the best fighters are the guys who, and you see it in other ways, like Tyron Woodley, and Demetrious talked to us about that and looking it up. So Dana White basically said earlier this month that Tyron Woodley's next fight is going to be against Stephen Thompson. That's who it is. And Woodley is kind of making, they haven't really talked to me about it. I haven't set a bout date, all of those things. And
he wants the big payday.
Correct. And Dana's saying, no, you're going to fight the guy that's next in line, that's the top contender, who is anybody that's watched that division. It is Stephen Thompson.
And that's, to me, people talk about the comparison of MMA and boxing. And to me, that is the absolute key, and more specifically the UFC, because Bellator will put on the freak show. They'll put on the car wreck that people can't turn away from, but it's a silly fight. The UFC, for the most part, Dana White, the Fertitta brothers, Joe Silva, everybody that's part of Sean Shelby, everybody that puts these fights together, they are matching the best against the best in their primes. There's none of the BS of Floyd Mayweather waiting 6 years to fight Manny Pacquiao. There's none of this, I want to fight this guy. I'm going to pick and choose my opponent. That doesn't exist here. It does to a certain extent with the champs, but they're not calling up some relic out of the woods here and saying, well, he had a big name, so I'm going to beat him up for a big payday. That doesn't exist. And that's the beauty, and that's why the UFC and MMA, in my estimation, has surpassed boxing, has become so compelling, because you're seeing the best fight the best in their primes. Everybody loses. They fight their way back. There's none of this protecting the record with tomato cans and all that stuff. I think it's polar opposite of what boxing has been. And it's something that I think combat sport fans truly appreciate and look forward to.
Not only that, this is what Pride, the promotion that was the dominant global. It certainly had the bigger purses over in Japan, and it's a promotion that has always much more straddled that line between pro wrestling and actual combat sport than the UFC has. But they would put on freak shows too, whether it's Hong Man Choi or all of the different. You'd see some ridiculous stuff that they would end up sanctioning. And the UFC, they will put on the fights that people want to see, but they're also going to do right by the guys who are the best fighters. And right now, there's a pretty compelling point. Rogan says it all the time, that Demetrious Johnson is the best fighter currently fighting.
Yeah, and it's the closest thing they do to a freak show in the UFC is something like what we just saw: Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is a guy with double-digit losses. He was not an elite level fighter that everybody's clamoring to see, but he's a great personality. Conor's a great person. Conor's not the champ of 170, but this fight was massive, and it was compelling, and it was competitive, and it's two guys that are still in their prime. So it had the freak show aspect, just in the sense of it wasn't two guys that have been fighting and climbing the ladder, and they finally meet head to head to see who's going to be the champ. That element didn't exist between these two. So you could say, well, that was kind of the sideshow, but it's still two big names, one who's a champ in another division, who's an elite level fighter, both in their primes, and it's still a fight that everybody wants to pay to see.
Yeah, if this was Pride, we'd see CM Punk fighting for a title when he makes his unveiling here.
You're probably right. You'd
see that. James Toney and Randy Couture would have headlined a card
instead
of kind of being the throwaway.
There's a freak show.
Bout.
Okay, they did do it. There's one.
But that was more to prove a point, right?
I think that was to shut Tony up, according to Dana, saying Tony was just blowing him up on the phone. Give me a fight. I'm going to take out anybody on your roster, blah, blah, blah. All right, fine. You better be careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
you got it.
Did he last a minute?
He may have lasted.
It might have been.
It was a silly fight. Yeah, it was silly. But I understood, like, all right, listen, man. You want it, you got it, pal. Enjoy yourself.
Well, that's going to do it for Fight this week. We appreciate Demetrious Johnson getting in the cage with us. We look forward to being back.
Hopefully you can get him
week.
To sing next time.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I don't know where that came from. Honestly, I think it was like 10 years ago when I wrote my first story, and one of the copy editors at one of the papers sent me a note saying, and I was sure it was Demetrious Johnson. And I don't think that's the first time I've looked and tried to find evidence of him being a gospel singer.
Well, he slapped that one down.
He did. There were a couple links on. I did a little Google research.
Yeah.
So I at least had there had been no corroboration of that, but I'd seen a couple things that, well, maybe it's true. Yeah, he smacked me down pretty good.
But
it's a good thing I admitted my ignorance going in.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's maybe we'll get him to sing next time. He's a free spirit.
Yeah, you can follow us, of course, on Fight and MMA Podcast. That's Fight MMA Podcast on Twitter. And also do an iTunes review. Help spread the word. If you enjoyed this and are enjoying our podcast, please pass it along. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next week.